Okay, now let's start. So Power Automate. So basically, Power Automate is one of the component of Power Platform. It basically used to automate the process where we can create workflows to integrate with our connected database with third-party services or inbuilt services to create a workflow which we can automate it. Okay, so it basically helps to connect to the data which you have access to it. From Power Automate, we can create workflows, triggers, action without code or script. So it does not require any coding experience to create the workflow. We can edit the workflow. We could create a approval request. Okay. We can automate the data import. So there are lots of scenarios where which we can use Power Automate to use. Okay. So, if I talk about common scenarios, so suppose you are working in a company and there you are basically you have lot of emails coming. So what you can do there, whenever a email arrives in your inbox, so you can automate the process, and that email you can basically store that email either in one of your database, or you can ping the message in Teams. So this could be one scenario. Or if I talk about an approval process, so uh, if you want to create approval flows, like whenever a item created in one of your database, so you should trigger the automate flow. So it should fetch the details from the database. It creates the approval and it sends the notification mail to your manager. Once the manager approves, you can update the status back to the uh, database. So this could be a common scenarios which we can leverage Power Automate to automate the process. So this is how the Power Automates looks like. We have trigger and we have actions. So trigger basically is an event which kick offs your flow. Okay. So there are three types of Power Automate flow. One is Power Automate, automated flow. Second one is scheduled flow, and third one is the manual trigger flow. So this example which you are seeing is a manual trigger flow where we have this manual trigger, and these two are the actions. Okay. Now this example which you are seeing is basically automated flow where you could see this is the trigger when a row is added, modified, or deleted. Okay. Whenever a row is added, modified, or deleted in the database, this particular flow will trigger. So this connector which you are seeing is a Dataverse connector. So it basically connected with a Microsoft Dataverse. So in a account table, if a row is created, modified, or deleted, this flow will trigger and it will send a notification to the email and the account name. Okay. Now we have a built-in connectivity which we can use to connect with other third-party services like productive providers, database, web APIs, productive apps, and more. So you, uh, could you please mute yourself? Yep. So these are the connectors which are available. There are more than 200 per 200 connectors available. We can also connect this Power Automate with on-premise system via data gateway. If you find that the connector is not available to connect with Power Automate, you could create your own custom connector by using the APIs. Okay. So these are the characteristics of Power Automate. Like we have triggers, we have like triggers or event. We have actions to perform. We have condition. We have loops to iterate through the each of the item of an array. We have workflow to call. We could also share our automate flows to your within the organization, so the user can also use the same flow. And we have templates, so there are more than 100 plus templates available in Power Automate, which you can use to create the flow. So you don't need to create the flow from a start or from a scratch. You can use the templates. So suppose if I use one of the template, notify a team when a file is added to a SharePoint. So this is one template. So whenever a file is added to a SharePoint database, you should notify the team members in a Teams. Okay. So you can use this template to create such type of flows. You can create this flow for a approval. So there are 100 plus templates available in Power Automate. So this is one of the example of a template. So this is basically the blog connector, where you could see the updated features available, updated news for the Power Automate. So whenever a new news came, you should this flow will trigger and it will notify you in any of the, like, you could configure your Outlook, you could configure your Teams, so like that. So this is how the Power Automate portal looks. Okay. So let me just jump directly to the Power Automate dashboard. Okay. So this is how the Power Automate dashboard look like. Okay. We have environment to select. So currently I have only one environment, MSFT default. Okay. So this account I'm creating is using is a Microsoft developer account. So this is the default environment which I get. Okay. So from here you can change the environment also. You have a create option where you could see the types of flows. So in Power Automate Cloud, we have uh, automated cloud flow, we have instant cloud flow, we have scheduled cloud flow. Desktop flow and process mining is the different. Basically, desktop flow is another RPA tool, which is Power Automate Desktop, which basically helps to automate the UI elements. Okay. If you think that you need to automate the process with the help of UI element, then you could use the Power Desktop flow. So in cloud, we have three types: automated cloud flow, instant cloud flow, and scheduled cloud flow. Automated cloud flow basically uh, which is automatically triggered when an event happens. As I've already given you an example, if we have database, if another user create a new record in the database, the flow should trigger. So using the automated cloud flow, we can use that. Okay. Similarly, we have instant cloud flow. In instant cloud flow, the user manually triggers the flow. Okay. Either the instant cloud, the user will manually trigger the flow, or you could also trigger the flow from Power App application also. So those are the instant cloud flows only. Okay. Now we have scheduled cloud flow. So scheduled cloud flow is basically where we can suppose you have a scenario where you have to trigger the flow every day 5 p.m. Okay. Then you can use schedule flow, which will trigger every day 5 p.m. And so this is how basically these are the three types of flows, and we will be also creating one of the each type in today's session. We this is so this is the these are the template. Once you click on this template button, these are the templates available. So you can use these templates to create flow. Suppose if you find that you need to create a similar kind of implementation, so you could choose one of the template and create your flow. This is one where you can find a documentation related to the Power Automate. My flows, where you could see the flows which you have created. All the flows will be visible here. Okay. Approval is where suppose you have created an approval request. So those details will be visible here. Okay. So we have approval connectors available. If you create an approval using those connector, the details will be showing here, like received, sent, and history. You could see yesterday I created one approval. Why I created this approval? So whenever you create first approval request, so it basically takes time to create a basically in backend, it creates the approval tables in a dataverse when you initiate first approval. Okay. Now we have solution. So solution where we could see all the solutions available here. So solution is basically which is we can say is like a box where we are keeping our power apps, power automate, connections, environment variables. So those all details we can keep in one of the solutions. So you have to create new solution if you're creating a new project. Okay. So you should create first solution. Then you should add your Power Automate flows, Power App application. So whenever you need to import this solution, export this solution into different environment, or if you want to use the automate flow into a new environment, then you should use the solution to import and export that solution, automate flows or the Canvas application. We will be discussing this on detail when we will create some Power Automate flows and a Canvas application. Process mining is different. This is a new feature which come. Here we could see the desktop flow activities. So we are not covering desktop flow. So just leave it for now. Now you could see the solution, the connect tables. So this tables is a basically a Dataverse table. So Dataverse is a inbuilt Microsoft Dataverse. We have connectivity where you could see all the connections available. What are connection which I created? You could see here. Now discover all. Let me click on discover all. Yeah. We have connectors. So there are, I told you that there are 100, 200 plus connectors available. So you could see the connectors which are available here. These are the connectors from productive to web APIs to, there are lots of connector. You could see the Airtable connector. You could see Azure connector. There are lots of connectors available. So you can connect with these services to use Power Automate. And we have a gateway, we have custom actions. Okay, we have custom connector. So custom connector is if you don't find any connector available here, so you could create your own custom connector for to connect with a third party services. Okay, now let's quickly jump into one of the flow and just create one example of each flow. So any doubt related to this dashboard? If you have any question, just please feel free to ask if you have any question related to this dashboard, or else we
Yeah,
can start with our first flow.
hi, this is Ray here. I
Yeah,
joined little bit late, so I might miss that conversation. Like, what is that Power Automate like? Because I'm very new to this, and why we're
yeah,
using Power
base.
Automate? Like, what is the use of it? Like,
Okay.
because
So,
yeah, I
yeah,
work in a ERP tool, so how it can be useful for me? Like, what is the
yeah.
benefit? Like,
See, basically Power Automate, which helps to automate the process. Okay. So if you find any use case where you can leverage Power Automate, so when I will be creating these flows, when I will be showing the flows, you will be able to understand how basically that Power automate the process. Okay. So as I told you some common scenarios also, like we could automate the process when item is created in SharePoint. We could automate the process when an email arrives in your inbox. Okay. We can also automate the process when a new message added to your Teams channel. So these are the simple use cases. But if you want to connect with a third party applications, okay. So suppose you are working in a company, you have one application. Now from that application, you need to connect with a Power Automate. So what you can do, you can call that Power Automate flow from your application to automate the process. So you have one application, employee application you have, okay, and you have to track the employee approvals. Okay, so what you could do there, you could create a one Power Automate flow, approval flow. You can connect with that automate flow with one of your application by using the APIs, and then you can trigger the Power Automate flow to call the basically to create an approval. So these are the just common scenarios. So yeah, okay. So now let's start with the first
Sagar,
flow.
sorry,
Yeah.
I have one question. Will we be also covering process mining in this course? Not in this
No,
call, but just wanted to know in the
no,
course.
no. Process mining is a like different topic totally, like where we are like we check for the details of the like it's basically different topic, process mining, and
So
it's a new
is the
feature
process
which
guidance? Yeah, yeah. Okay, okay. And is
yeah
that a
it
process
basically
guidance which says
if you
interact
could see it yeah
the interactive process steps which you said is one of the use case. So are we then covering at least let's say that in the course process guidance and interactive process steps?
yeah basically yes so as I told you, so you're asking about to connect with the third party, like I told that we could use APIs to call our Power Automate flows.
No, so it was like process guidance, interactive step-by-step completion of common business processes.
Yeah, that we will be doing.
Okay, okay, clear, clear.
Yeah,
And then do you have any other course for process mining itself? Because
uh,
I'm also interested in process mining.
yeah. Currently, it's not. Sorry.
Okay, okay, okay.
Yeah,
Sorry, continue. Thank you.
yeah, yeah. So let's start with the first flow. Let's create one first manual trigger flow. Let me give the name. You can also skip the process. Then it will ask for to choose the trigger, and you can also choose the trigger from here also. Let me just give manual, manually trigger. Okay. So this is a new UI which comes in Power Automate, but I use the old, which is very clear. So this is Power Automate trigger. Okay, this is a manual trigger. You could also provide the inputs to this particular flow. So let's first test this without the input, and then we can also test with input. Okay. So let me just create one simple flow where I'm just sending a mail to myself. Okay. So to send the mail, once you click on this action, this new step, you could see these are the connectors available. Okay. So, and each connector, there are actions. Okay. So suppose if I search for Outlook connector, Outlook 365. Once I click here, you could see the actions available for this Outlook connector. We can create contact, create event, send an HTTP request, send an email, delete contact. So these are the actions which are available. So based on the requirement, you could use these actions. So in backend, basically, these are the connectors which are created by Microsoft only. So in backend, there is a C# code written which basically calls that API, Outlook API to uh, uh, use that functionality. So yeah. So let's choose send an email v2. Okay. So what I am doing here, I am creating compose variables. So for now, just just consider compose variable as a variable only. Okay, it is a variable, but it has some different uh, features if we compared with the actual variables. Okay. So for now, just take it as a variable only. Okay. Where the variable name is composed, we can rename it to 2. Now we will be creating one more flow, one more compose where we will be adding subject. Now third compose where we will be adding a body. So this is the three variables I compose variable I created. Two where I will be adding the email for to which I need to send the email. Second one is the subject and email subject, and third is basically the body. Okay, so let's add two. Okay, so if you will click here in two, you could see once you search. So currently in this tenant, I am the only user available in this tenant. So my email is only visible. Okay. So let me add two here. Let me remove this. Now, once I click here, so either you could use dynamic content or you could use, so this is how basically the dynamic content works, or you could also suggest from the that list. Basically, that list is coming from the Azure only. Now, once you click here too, it you could see this window, dynamic content window. Okay. So what value you need to pass here? We need to pass 2. Okay. So these are the values from the above actions available. So suppose send an email v2 is one of the action, and these are the actions just above the send an email v2. So you could see all the action which is above send an email v2 will be visible here to use the values. So for 2, I am using this 2 variable. Now for subject, I will use this subject variable, and body, I will use for body. You can also directly write the body like hi team. This is my first flow. So like you could also write body manually, or you could also pass that body dynamically. So currently I am passing it as dynamically. I already created the variable. So let me give the subject line as test subject. Okay. What's happening? Now we will be giving body test body. Okay. So we have provided the inputs. Now let's trigger the flow. Let me save the flow and let's trigger. So to trigger this, once we click on run, it will create the connection. It will basically check for connection, Office 365 Outlook connection, and then continue and then run flow. Done. So here you could see the run histories. So whatever the flow will trigger, you could see the history here. So if you could see the 8 second ago, the flow triggered, and the two subject output is subject and the body, and we have triggered the mail. Now let me go to the Outlook and check for the email. Yeah. So you could see the email arrived from Sagar Vikram, it arrived. Okay. Why? Because the connection which we created is using my account, using this account. So if I will show you the connection, so the connection which is created is using my account. So that's the reason I got the mail from myself. If I suppose create your connection, then the mail will send from your account. Okay. You could see the test subject and the test body. So this is the manual trigger flow. Now what we can do here, let me create a input variable in a manual trigger. So first input we will be giving 2. The second input variable we will be adding subject, and third we will be adding body. So this is the 3 input variable for the manual trigger. Now here let me copy this first. Okay. So in 2 I will pass the dynamic content from here to. Okay. So the value of this will be added here and the value of this will be added in here. Okay. Similarly, I will be adding the subject from the dynamic content and body. Okay. So now the flow is completed. Now let's save it and again test the flow. You could also test from here, but let me just move back and test from the main manual dashboard. Now let me run this, trigger this flow. Once I click on run, it will ask for the input variables. Okay, to subject and body. We will paste the email. We will give it as test subject to and test body to. Now we will run the flow. So once I run the flow, once the execution completed, okay, once the execution completed, we could go to Outlook and you could see the test subject 2 and the test body 2. So this is how the manual trigger flow works. We can add other, so this is just a basic and simple flow, but if you could use, if you have a use case where you need to use a third party application or the third party services and the connectors are available, so you could add those connectors and use those. Or if not, then you could create your own custom connector and you could use that. You could also call the APIs using HTTP connector. So that base, those connectors we will be covering on later stage. So we have lot of connector available. So HTTP. So with the HTTP connector, you could basically call the HTTP request and all those stuff. Yeah. So this is one manual trigger flow. Now let me create one automated flow. Is there any doubt related to the manual trigger?
No.
Okay, fine. Thank you. So now let's use automate flow. So flow name, automated flow. Now these are the triggers available. Okay. So there are lots of triggers. So let me skip this and we could see the triggers here. So to automate this, first we have to select the connector, which through which service we will be connecting with. So for now, we will be connecting with SharePoint as I have SharePoint list created. Okay. But you could see there are connectors, lots of connectors available. You have Power App, Skills, Virtual Agent, HTTP, Power Pages, and all those. And in a standard connectors, these are the connectors. If we use Outlook connector, okay. So for Outlook, these are the triggers available. When a new email arrives, when an email is flagged, okay, when an email is flagged v4, v3. So these are the version, okay. V3 is currently in production, but whenever you see this preview, it basically in testing mode. You could use it, but currently it's been tested by the Microsoft or by the users. So this is currently, sometime it may give execute successfully, sometime not. So currently it's in testing mode. Okay. Now we have when email arrives in a shared mailbox, when a new email monitoring me arrives. So these are the triggers for the Outlook. Okay. So we will create one example from this also. So let's first create the example from one of the SharePoint database. So SharePoint. So SharePoint is a database, okay, which is free, which we can use to create store our files, which we can use to create our tables. So let me just open the SharePoint dashboard. So this is how the SharePoint dashboard looks like. We have two sites, communication site and personal SharePoint sites. Once I click on personal SharePoint site, you could see the list. So currently I am having only one list, which the name is employees. Okay. You could also store the files in that uh, SharePoint list documents. Okay, so you could upload the file, you could create the folder and upload the file. So these basically it's a basic SharePoint database, and you could also fetch these files list details from Power Automate also. So that we will be covering here. So these are the triggers available when an item is created, when an item is created or modified. This basically used when an record is created. So suppose let me open quickly that employee table. So this is the employee table. So when an item is created, a new record is created in this list. So what it will do, our flow will trigger. When an item or modified, so either the item is created or modified, then the flow will trigger. So these are the triggers available for SharePoint. When a file is created in folder for a selected file for a selected item, so these are the lots of triggers which is available and you could use this. So let me just first create one flow with when item is created. Okay, once I click on this SharePoint when item is created, it will ask for the share site address. So once you click on drop down, you could see all the site which you have access to it. Okay, so currently I am having communication site and the personal SharePoint site. So you could choose the SharePoint site. Once you choose the SharePoint site, it will ask you to select the list name. So I have only one list available, which is employee. So I clicked on employee. Now, what I will be doing here, I will be creating one compose and I will rename with employee detail. Okay. This is the compose variable which I created. Now, what I will be doing, I will be adding one string, the first name. Okay. Now, first name. Now we have to choose from the dynamic content. So you could see when an item is created and these are the outputs from this particular connector. So we have column title. So title is basically the first name, last name, email, phone. So these are the columns available in SharePoint. So once you see here, so all the columns will be visible here. Okay. First name, last name, phone number, gender value, job title, department. You could see one inbuilt flow that automatically created flows also. Okay. So let's search for title, first name, then last name. So these values are I'm taking from the dynamic content of that particular output. Last name and the email and we could check for one department also, job title. Job title. Okay. So this is one compose I created. Okay. Now let me just save it. So currently I'm just showing how basically this will trigger. Later we can add more functionality. So this trigger is when item is created, and so the output which we will receiving will be storing here the first name, last name, email, job title. Now let me add one more. So let me just save it and trigger the flow. So first, whenever you do the or whenever you create the automate flow, so first time when you create, just test it. So you could see to see it work now, add a new item to a SharePoint folder you selected. Okay. So what you could do here, you just go to SharePoint list, add a new record, give that first name as Saga, last name Vikram, email, email could be Sagar @example.com, phone 12345678, gender male, and age 25, job title developer, developer, year of experience 3, salary 1000, department product. Okay, so now I have added the record. Now let me save it. So once the record is created, let me sort this out based on the show and hide column. So let me add created. Okay. Yeah, it also. So you could see this is the record which I've created. Okay. Now if you will go to flow, the flow should trigger. Why? Because the item is created. So it may take time, 10 to 20 seconds to trigger, but you could see the flow triggered. Okay. And once I click on here, so when the new row created in this list, the flow triggered. You could see the details here. The first name Sagar, last name Vikram, email, and job title developer. So this is the basic example of automate flow. Now, what we can do here, we could also send an email based on the details. Okay. So if we could use Outlook connector, we could send a mail also where you have to pass the details. So in body, we can pass the employee details to from either you could check from the dynamic content, but the email is incorrect. So sagar@example.com is the incorrect email. Once I will use this, so it will fail to basically send a mail. And we could also add the subject like employee details. And once we create a new record, this flow will trigger it, it will send an email notification. Okay. So this is how the automate flow works. Now let's create one more automate flow with using Outlook connector. So Outlook, we could name the Outlook automated flow, and we could search for the Outlook connector, Outlook. Okay. When a new email arrives, this we will be using. Mhm.
Agar,
Okay.
what's the difference between the new designer tab that's going to all the time and then you're toggling back? So, any specific
Yeah.
difference there?
Basically, in new designer, you could use the Copilot. Using natural language, you can add those actions available. Okay. But currently that is like not efficient. Basically, it's sometimes create a correct flow, sometimes not. Basically, it use generative AI to do that. So that's the reason I'm using this classic UI. You could use new UI also, where basically in new designer, uh, let me save and switch, but it will ask for action. Okay, switch without saving. In new designer, once I click here, it will ask for these parameters. We have two, then you should add the value. Then again, we have to select the CC from, and then you should add the value. So this is basically a bit difficult to add those values. But if you could see in a classic, once you click on advanced option, you could see all the options available. You don't need to select to CC to or CC from. The all the options will be visible and you can directly use that. So that's the reason I use classic designer. Okay. Now when a new email arrives, v3. So this is the version 3 of this connect action. So inbox, these are the filters. Okay, to CC from, include attachment, subject filter if you want to add. So what I will be adding, I will be adding one subject filter um, where test automated cloud flow. So this is a subject I am choosing, and these are also like if suppose you need to trigger this trigger when an email arrives from this recipient. Okay, from this recipient, then only the flow should trigger. If the subject contains this, then only the flow should trigger. If it includes, if that email includes an attachment, then only the flow trigger. So these are the filters. So currently you could also choose the folder in which folder the email arrives. So currently I'm choosing inbox, no attachment, importance any. Okay, filter. I have added the subject filter as automate test automate cloud flow. Okay. Now I will be adding one compose. So basically when you add trigger, it's compulsory to add one action also. Okay. Then only the flow will complete. Now from dynamic content, you could see these are the outputs available from when a new, so you could check from which the user email came, what are the recipients, two recipients, subject, body, importance, low, normal, high, CC'd emails, BCC'd emails is reply to message ID, internal message ID, conversation ID. So these are the uh, lots of values which are coming from this when a new email arrives connectors. Okay. So let me add few of the dynamic values here. Let me add the subject first, then two, and need to let me add importance also. Importance. Okay. So these three things I've added in dynamic content. Let me rename it with Outlook details. Okay. Now let me save it and click on test. So whenever you should create automate flow, first once the flow completed, just click one time test. So it will ask. So now that flow is activated to see it work. Now send an email in your inbox. So let me add one email. So new email. The body which I filtered is not this. Okay, so let me copy the email here. Let me check for the body first. What body I have added? Subject. Sorry. So the filter subject I added is test automated cloud. Let me copy this. Okay. Now go back. Now in body, we will be adding the in subject, we will be adding test automated cloud flow. This is the flow which triggered when email arrives. Okay. Okay. Now let me send this. So once I send the email, the automate flow should trigger. So in send item, you could see I have sent the mail. Okay. As I send the mail to myself, the email will arrive to myself also. Now you could see the email arrive. And if we go to the Power Automate and if we wait for 10 or 20 seconds, the flow will trigger. So you could also refresh it. Yeah. Now you could see the flow triggered 3 seconds ago. And the Outlook details, the subject is test automated cloud flow. The from which the user base 2 is Sagar Vikram at the rate XHF4X. Importance is normal. So this is how basically you could create a automated flows. Any questions related to the automated flow?
Sagar, any
Cool.
alternative we can use in case of compose?
Yeah, you could you basically compose is which holds any of the data type. Okay. If I am giving this as in this format, it basically considering as a string. Okay. If I give as an array of object, so that will be considered as an array. If I give directly a object, so this Outlook details will be considered as a object data type. So the data here basically in order to create a compose variable, we don't need to declare any data type of the variable. Okay. But when we use variables, basically that topic I'm thinking to cover in next, but let me just show you the variable. So these are the variables. So initialize variable. So once we initialize the variable, you could see it will ask for the data type, Boolean, integer, float, string, object, array, and the name of the variable. So this is how basically we can use variables. So the alternate is variables only, but mostly I'm using compose. Why that compose works much faster and we don't need to define any data type for that. Okay. For some of the cases, we should also use variable because in compose we cannot set the change the value. Once this variable is declared, we cannot change the value in the blow after few of the step, but we can change the values of this variable. So there are few comparison also that I will be discussing later. What are the comparison between variables and compose? So once it is declared, we cannot use the variable. Once it is declared, we can use the variable value in any part of the flow. Okay. We cannot change the value of compose variable. We can change the value. So there are lots of difference between variables. So that we can discuss later. Okay. So any question related to automated flow, like if you have any question related to triggers and all, or then we can jump to the scheduled flow.
Yeah, hi Sagar. Bharat this side.
Yeah, yeah.
We have
Hi, Bharat.
used this because I'm just quietly new in this scenario.
Okay.
So, I just want to ask, can we use this Power Automated flow in a Dynamics X? Do you have any example? I mean, in
Uh,
Dynamics X, yeah.
Basically, I have not worked on Dynamic X, but if you could
Okay,
explain me what basically it do, then I can just. So basically, you could use Power Automate if the Dynamics can calls the APIs and all those stuff. You could call our Power Automate flow. Okay. If we have,
okay,
I need to check Dynamic X connectors available. If we have Dynamic X connector, then we can
okay,
use Automate flow. But I have seen that like I have also integrated with Lambda function. Okay, I have also integrated with this with using Azure function. I also use
okay.
Power Automate flow with JavaScript, Python. So for all those, I am able to call the Power Automate flow. So yes, so you could also do that. But as I don't know much details on Dynamic X, so but yeah,
It's okay.
if if it's having that functionality, then basically we can use it. because we just need to export one API, and from there we can could call the automate flow, or we could
So
also create our own trigger. So to trigger, yeah,
it means so only whatever connector it's having, we can create the automate flow only for that particular application. Like we are having the connector for Outlook, we are having the connector for SharePoint. So
yeah,
if we are
we
having the
have.
connector,
So yeah, so like these are the built-in connector which is available in Power Automate. Okay,
okay,
but
uh,
if you want to connect with other application, you create your own connector also. Okay,
customized connector.
if you want, yeah, you could create your own customized connector. And if you have like to call the APIs and also the best action I would suggest is to when an HTTP request received. Through that connector, basically we can call automate flow from any of the application. As I told, like we just need to call that API and we could call that Power Automate flow. That
Okay,
I can show you also that how that basically works. Okay.
okay. At least
Yeah.
now I have a concept in my mind. That's okay. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. So the third is basically the schedule flow. Uh, as we are running out of time, so let me just quickly show you this also. So this is a schedule flow where we can decide the interval. We could select the frequency, like every minute we should trigger, every week, okay, every day that flow should trigger. So you could set the frequency. Suppose I'm setting the frequency to week. It will ask to select a time zone. Okay, Indian time zone we have selected. Now we have to select in what days do we need to trigger our flow. So today is Saturday, so let's select Saturday. We could select Monday and Wednesday. So these 3 days flow should trigger. Now we have to add the hours at what time that flow should trigger. So currently it's 9:57 a.m. So we could select 10. We can select 9, and in what minute. So you could see the enter the valid minute values from 0 to 59. Okay. So basically the minutes also we have to provide. So currently it's 9:57. So we can just set it to 59. Okay. So once I set this to 59, you could see the preview. First flow will trigger at 9:59 and the second flow should trigger at 10:59. If I give comma separated 0 also. So you could see 9 a.m., 9:59, 10, 10:59. So this is how basically you can use set this recurrency. And now new step, let me add one compose. And here I'm just adding the testing scheduled. Okay. Now I'm saving this. Once I saved this, so the recurrence is basically 9 a.m., 9:59 a.m., 10 a.m., 10:59 a.m. Okay. So at 9:59 the flow should trigger, 10 a.m. should flow should trigger, and 10:59. If I will go back, so we have to wait for 10 a.m. So yeah, before you trigger, so first you have to trigger manually. So once the flow triggered manually, then you could first time you have to select manually, and then the second time it will trigger automatically. When the 10 a.m. will be there, then the flow should trigger. Okay. So till the time, let me go back to edit mode, and this supports, so if you could see, this supports 24 hours clock. Okay, so here you could see 0 to 20 or 23. So basically it supports 24-hour format. Now it's 10 a.m. Let me go back to flow and check that flow string. It should trigger. Okay, let me check why it's not triggered.
But where we need to
Okay,
define like which flow you have to
yeah,
run as a recurrence based, right?
yeah. So this is the flow. Recurrence compose is the flow name, and we have a trigger recurrence. Okay, so this is the flow, and for this flow we have set it up this condition. So we don't need to externally define that flow name and all. We have this trigger, so this flow will trigger.
Mhm.
But we have to basically change the interval, and let me select the week. Monday, Saturday, every 1 week. Uh, it's like start time is okay. Okay, so you could see here that start time is 4:30 a.m. Okay, this is correct. Why that should not trigger? Let me add few more minutes. Uh, 3, 4, 5. Okay, let me add 2 also. So 10, 10 to 20, 10. Okay, let me save it. What? Uh, okay, I've added the space here. What there is 59. Now let's see, the flow should trigger. I don't know why it's not triggering, but let me check one more time settings. So yeah, if you could see at 10:03 a.m. now the flow triggered. Similarly at 10:04 a.m. the flow should trigger. Okay, now let's wait for a few minutes for 10:04. Then we could check for the 10:04 also that flow should trigger. So this is how basically we can create a recurrence flow, scheduled flow, and the actions basically you could use any. Like once the flow triggered, you could call the child flow also. Okay, so we have child flow connector. Okay, we have desktop flow. So we can also call the desktop flow also here. Okay, so but currently the desktop flow is a basically a different automation tool which use UI element to do that, automate the process. So that basically we can discuss on brief later. So this is how basically the recurrence flow used. So if you have time, if I can take 5 more minutes, so I can just show you that how basically we can use when HTTP request received to call the flow from third party services. If that use API, can I just show that also?
Yes, yes,
Yeah,
please.
yeah. So in instant flow, we will be creating HTTP flow. Okay, we have flow name HTTP. And from here, okay, let me skip it first. Move to designer. Okay, this is the connector. When HTTP request is received, okay, so this connector has to trigger the flow from third party if they supports API. Okay, if you don't want to create your own custom connector, then this is the best option which you could use here. In advanced option, you could select the method as get, or you could select if you want to post something, you could select the post method. If you want to just uh, get something from them, then you could use get method. You could also use post, patch, delete. So for now, let me just skip get method. And any user in my tenant, anyone. So this is the security. So this feature is now available. Earlier it was not. So now basically we can also restrict the access of this flow from outside the organization. So if this flow triggered within the tenant, the if the flow triggered within the tenant, then only this flow trigger, else it will not. If I use anyone, then anyone from outside the organization can also trigger this. Okay. Now I have used the method as get, who can trigger the flow anyone, and let me just uh, send respond. Okay. uh, Response. Okay. So once the flow triggered, we have to send response back to the user. Say hi flow triggered. Okay. Now let me save this. So once I saved this, what's happening now? Flow is saved but can't be used. Why? Flow owner needs a premium license. Okay. Start a free 90-day trial. So this is a premium connector. So you should use a premium license to use that. So I started my premium trial version. So let me just add one more time when HTTP. See, you could see the premium there. So it uses premium. So what our connectors are premium, then it should use premium license to use those connectors. Okay. So respond, or we can use request. From request connector, we have one action called response. And here we can just give hi flow executed. Okay. So we have set the method. Once I save this, now you could see the HTTP get URL generated for me. Now let me copy this. Once I copied this, go back. Now you could see there is no flow triggered, but when we call this from here, okay, this is the directly I am calling the flow. Once I click on enter, see, hi the flow executed. And once you will go back here and you will check for the run history. Yeah, see, the flow triggered. So this is how basically we can use this when HTTP request. So currently I've just passed this as a URL and it executed, but you can call using the postman. You can call this URL using the third party application to trigger the automate flow. So this is one of the actions which we can integrate with the third party applications also to trigger the flow. Any question related to this? We could also currently we use the get method. We could use post method, but for that we have to define the request body. That's the
So
reason
do
we have
we
not
do
done.
we do we need to enter our like URL, HTTP URL or
Yeah.
application
So
URL or
suppose,
what?
yeah. So once you save this flow, okay. so that
Mm-hmm.
Microsoft automatically generate the URL for you. Okay, this get HTTP URL. You just need to copy this and you can call that, use this URL endpoint to call that Power Automate flow. Okay.
Okay, like
If you want,
Microsoft, how it will get to know like if I am a, like I'm using Dynamics, okay, FNO,
okay,
then
okay.
what I supposed to do, like that URL we need to use here or what? Or Microsoft will generate then?
Yeah, see, first you have to create the flow with all the
Yes.
functionality. Once you created the flow, okay, if you want to send inputs from that dynamics, then you can basically create, instead of method get, you could use post, and you could define your JSON request
Mm-hmm.
body. Okay, once you do that, you have, so you are calling from dynamics, then you have to send back the response also, so you have to use response connector, and in body you have to pass the response body. Okay, once the flow is completed, okay, once the flow is completed, you will save this flow. Once you save this HTTP get URL will be generated for you by the Microsoft only. Okay,
Okay.
this URL you have to copy, and you can use this URL to call the Power Automate flow. So let me just share this URL with you. Uh, Let me add in the chat from where I can add it. Yeah. Okay, I shared this URL with you. Now you can use this URL to in a browser and call the automate flow. Okay. Now let me just go back to here, run history. Now yes, could you please call that URL from the browser on? So you could see that you are receiving one response from that. Hi,
My
uh,
flow is
flow
executed.
executed. Similarly, you could use this like URL with your Dynamics application to trigger it. Okay. So what you have to do, you have to just create a sample flow, and you could use you could check for the functionality, how basically we can call an API, and from there you could use this.
Okay, means
Okay.
this URL we can use in our application as a like endpoint address, right?
Yeah. Yes. So like you're calling an APIs. Did you call any API
Mm-hmm.
from Dynamics?
Yeah.
Okay. So this is an API only, where
Okay.
you have
All
to
right.
pass the query parameters. So you could also define
Mm-hmm.
query parameters and all those stuffs. Okay. If I will go here
Mm-hmm.
in show advanced, you can give the relative path like test. Okay. So once I give the relative part, it will basically add that relative path in this URL. Okay. You can also ask for the request body schema. Like what could be the request body schema? You could define the request body schema. If that request body satisfy, then only you have to basically trigger. Okay. In settings, uh, you can check for trigger condition also when a header contain this. So those details you can pass it. Okay. Once you will add the query parameter, those values will also be visible. So this is like how you basically exposed an API. Okay. With the method, if you want to post something, send any data to this flow, you could use post. If you want to take any data from this, you could use get, and then you can call that. So if Dynamic supports API, then easily you can integrate Power Automate with that using this action. You could also see that
Okay.
once you call this URL, you are able to get the response. So this response body is high flow executed. So you are able to see a lot of people executed this. So yeah. So this is how basically you could once you turn off this flow. Okay. Now I've turned off this flow. So now this flow will not trigger. Once you will call this API one more time. Okay. Let me call this API one more time. It gives an error code workflow trigger is not enabled. Could not execute workflow. Why that flow is turned off? Okay, so this
Mm-hmm.
is how basically you can trigger the automate flow. So any questions related to Power Automate schedule or instant or this flow? Maybe later we can
Yes,
discuss Canvas
Sagar,
application. I Yep. Yeah.
am
Go
I
ahead.
audible?
Yes, yes.
Yeah. Yeah, actually, earlier you were saying about recurrence, right?
Yes,
So
yes.
we are explicitly triggering that one time, right? So do we have
Yeah.
any other connector which help us to trigger that?
No. Basically, recurrence is a trigger. Okay. That
Yeah,
is
at
not
least
an action.
we
Yeah.
no
Yeah.
that action we actually don't want to perform now. I mean, we need to just
Okay.
set that recurrence, but explicitly we are trying to execute that. So not to execute that, do we have any other connector which will trigger automatically? Means task scheduler kind of.
Yeah. Basically, then you can leverage the automated flow. If you don't want to use recurrence, then you can use automated cloud flows.
So automated will also does, right? But it once it does, right?
No,
There
whenever
also we
a
need to.
event
Okay,
happens, so it's not once. So
uh-huh,
whenever a event happen, it will trigger. Okay. In a day, so suppose I created one flow. Okay. So this is an event when an item is created and employee detail list. Okay. So whenever a new record is created in this list, suppose in a
that
day
time it
there
will
are
trigger.
10 records created, then the 10 times the flow will trigger. It's not like it will trigger only one for one time. Whenever that event happen, the flow will trigger.
Yeah,
Yeah.
thanks.
Now you got it, or you have any other questions?
No, no, it's clear.
Okay. Any other questions?
So, what are the
Maybe.
things you are going to cover like here in this course? Like,
Okay.
uh,
In
is it only Power Automate or Power Apps?
Yeah. So currently this demo I have given for Power Automate.
Mm-hmm.
So in Power Automate, we will be covering the variables compose. Okay. We should know how basically we can work with JSON in Power Automate. So basically all the outputs which we get is in a form of JSON. So how basically we can get the data from JSON and all those stuff. Then we could use SharePoint connectors to create the file. We will be showing uh, how OneDrive communicates with Power Automate. So there are basically we will be creating lots of flows using other services like Dataverse, SharePoint, OneDrive. Okay. If I can also, if I don't know, you know the DocuSign, but I can show you that also how basically we can connect with DocuSign. So if it's not like a, so we will be covering complete Power Automate from basics to how basically we can create a automate complete automate flow for an application. Okay, for the use case, for the requirement and all. So all the features, data operations, how basically we can manipulate the data, what are expressions. So currently I have not showed you the expressions. Okay, if I will go here, so we could write our own like formula to format the data. So in if you will see here the expression, it supports Power FX language, and if you could see that we have a split function. So these are the formulas which we can use to create. So this expression we will be covering how basically we can create an expression, how we could use if conditions, loops, do while loops. So all those things in Power Automate, and in Power App application, basically we will be covering the dashboard, how basically we can create a Canvas application, how we end-to-end Canvas application from basics to the complete executable Canvas application, like how basically we can add the data source in our Canvas application, how basically we can create the forms, how to edit the forms, how to update the forms. Okay. So that application we will be creating using the Power App application. And we will be also covering the virtual agent basic. So virtual agent is used to create the chatbot. Okay. So that chatbot we can deploy in one of the like channels like Teams or your own website. So that we can use. So it basically used to create a chatbot. It's known as virtual. Currently, the name changed to Power Microsoft Copilot Studio, but earlier it known as Virtual Agent. Yeah. So these all three components we will be covering. And we will be also covering that how basically we can create the tables in SharePoint, how we can create the tables and Dataverse tables and all those stuff also. Yeah.
And like in Power Apps also we have other than Canvas, we have other things also, right? We can make
Yeah.
it some
So
complex design.
yeah. So basic. So in Power Apps we have a Canvas application, we have model-driven application, and we have
Yeah, model.
portals. Okay. So in this, basically, we will be covering the Canvas application. So basically, the portal is completely different, and the model-driven application is completely the different topics.
Mm-hmm.
It comes under types of Power App application, but yeah, those are different.
But are we
Also,
covering this?
AI also here is integrated. Like AI Builder tool is also, I think,
AI
there, right?
Builder,
In Power AI
we
Hub,
can
AI
cover the
Builder.
AI Builder topics also. That is not a like AI Builder are just simple, where how basically we can train the model, so that we can cover.
In Power Apps also, right?
Yeah, basically, this is a so Power Automate, Power Apps, the AI Builder is same only. First, we have to train the model, and that AI build
Mm-hmm.
we can use AI Builder in both Canvas application and Power App application. Okay,
Okay.
yeah. So if you
Yeah,
create one custom connector in Power Automate, okay, that custom connector you could use in Power App application also. So both are connected to each other.
Mm-hmm. And
Yeah.
like to be honest, like because we are working in a ERP, and I know that is a Microsoft product, and we have already connector for this. If you search
Mm.
there, Microsoft Dynamics FNO will be getting.
Yeah.
But we
Yeah.
want like if it is a on premises or it is a cloud, maybe we need a
Oh.
session. Maybe we can also tell you what is the connector and all. Then probably you can help us at least, because otherwise it's not going to useful for us anything. So if you can just help us in that way also for 1 2 session, that would be great. Like how we
Yeah.
can
So
consume from that on premises. Like when you say on premises, it is connecting through data gateway, right? And
yeah. Yes. Yes.
so I
Maybe
just we just yeah.
we
Then we
can
can
connect and
practice like in our
yeah.
time. But initially you need to like help us. Okay.
Yeah.
We can tell you the
So
connector and all those things, but yeah.
yeah, that we can do, but as you told about gateway and all those stuff. So currently I don't have any access to gateway. Okay. I don't have any servers to create a gateway. So in demo I cannot show you that, but if you have that, then we can connect and
Hmm.
I can just explain
Yeah,
that.
yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Because I don't have any gateway and servers, so I will not be able to demo it from my system, but
Mm-hmm.
maybe we can connect and then we can check.
Yeah. All right. All right.
Yeah.
yeah, Sagar,
Hi,
one
Sagar.
confirmation.
Hi.
Yeah,
Yep.
can I go ahead? Okay.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, you were saying model driven and other component you are not explaining or in this session, not in this session, but for
Yeah.
Power App classes. I mean, will it be later or we are not going
So
to learn on that?
let me check with the team first the curriculum. Okay. Then that team can give you the details. But in the curriculum, what I see that we have to cover Power Automate, we have to cover Canvas application, how basically we can create Dataverse, we can use Dataverse, SharePoint, and the basics of virtual agent. So those stuffs is in the curriculum, but let me check with the team and then I will get back to you on that.
Yeah, please do
Yeah.
that. Yeah, thank you.
Okay. Hi, sir. I have a question. As you said now, like Dataverse, connecting the Dataverse, do we have any limitations? Can we have all the tables, complex tables in the sense, more number of records, like more than
Okay.
1 lakh records? We have in SQL tables, right? And we have complex
Yeah.
logic involved in stored procedures. Can we do the same in Dataverse tables? I mean, same number of records, more than 1 lakh records. And do we have tools or any way to query the database tables just like we do in stored procedure? Is there any way?
Um, Basically, I need to check the limitations of Dataverse, but yeah, we can create the records like thousands of records, but I need to check that 1 lakh limitation. So there are some limitation. Maybe I need to check and I will get back to you on that limitation part.
Okay. And also about that querying part, is there any way to write complex SQL logic in Power Automate or
Basically,
Power App?
we don't use SQL to query Dataverse. We just need to, we have connectors where we can use as to select the tables and then we have to add the filter query. The syntax is different. Like we don't use any SQL to filter out that Dataverse tables data, but we have
Yeah,
different
okay.
syntax. Yeah,
Yeah, I understand that
yeah,
because I also don't want the exact thing to do, because otherwise I would use the stored procedures itself. But I just
yeah,
want to know, is there a way to do all those complex logic? Might be a UI method, or however drag and drop, or like as you said, joining two
yeah.
tables.
Maybe, yeah. If you know SQL, we can connect Power Automate with SQL, your SQL database, and then you can query the Snowflake, use SQL to query the data. That also can be done. But if you
Yeah,
want to
that
use the date, yeah,
yeah, that can be done. I have achieved that using Power
yeah,
Automate and using that SQL execute
yeah,
stored procedure connected premium.
yes, yes,
So
yes,
I just
yeah.
want to get rid of this database and stored procedures.
Okay, so
So want
basically you want to use Dataverse.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
So want to make
yeah.
sure, will
If you,
it be an alternative or it has some limitations?
yeah, basically you don't need to create any query, SQL query to query the Dataverse. If I talk about Power Automate, Power Apps, then we have just few functions through which we can basically filter out the data from Dataverse. Like we have to
Okay.
pass the schema name of the column and the value which we are comparing. So suppose we have one column name first name. So schema name is CRD24 underscore first name. Then to query that, basically whatever the first name is Sagar, we have to filter out the data. Then we have to write a query like the schema name space EQ space in single quote. We have to just give the name of the filter alias like Sagar and all those stuff. So it will filter out the record for you. Yeah. Any other questions?
Sagar, what project you're going to cover in the syllabus?
So basically, we will be creating the all the types of Power Automate flows. Okay. So I will not say the project, but we will be creating the flows in Power Automate where for all the types using different connectors. And in Canvas application, we will be connecting with Power Automate. We will be creating end-to-end application where we can use employee management or the student management to create an approvals, to create an order. So those how basically we can use Power Apps to do that all the stuff. Yeah.
Okay,
Okay.
thanks. Yeah.
Yeah. And could you please drop your details in a chat bot so that team can phone numbers and email ID for further communication so team can communicate with you. If you could drop those details in the chat, that would be helpful.